The sky above Valara Prime burned red. Commander Zix stood on the balcony of the defense headquarters and watched his world die. Smoke rose from every direction. The beautiful crystal towers that had taken centuries to build were now broken ruins. Fires consumed the gardens where children used to play. The screams had finally stopped, but that made everything worse. Silence meant there was no one left to scream. 3 days ago, the Krell came. They arrived without warning, dropping from the sky like a plague of metal insects. Their ships were dark and twisted, nothing like the elegant vessels the Velarans built. The Krell did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply began to destroy everything. Zix had been a defense coordinator for 20 years, but Valara Prime had never needed defending before. His job was mostly ceremonial, managing the sensor arrays that watched the peaceful space around their planet. The Valarans were artists and philosophers. They built museums, not weapons. They wrote poetry, not battle plans. War was something from their ancient past, abandoned thousands of years ago when they chose a better path. Now that choice was killing them. The first Krell ships destroyed the orbital platforms within minutes. The platforms had shields, but they were designed to protect against asteroids and radiation, not military weapons. The Krell cut through them like they were made of paper. Debris rained down on the cities below. Thousands died before anyone understood what was happening. Zix sent out distress signals immediately. He broadcast on every frequency, begging for help from any species that could hear. The Galactic Council received his messages. So did the Takari Alliance and the Morphean Empire. All of them were powerful civilizations with vast fleets and advanced technology. All of them could have helped. None of them came. The responses Zix received were cold and practical. The Morpheans said it was too dangerous to engage the Krell. The Takari said they could not risk their ships for a lost cause. The Galactic Council expressed their sympathies but explained that intervention violated their policy of non-interference in regional conflicts. Regional conflict. That was what they called genocide. Zix wanted to scream at them. He wanted to curse their cowardice. But there was no time for anger. His people were dying and he had to save as many as possible. The Valaran military, such as it was, tried to fight back. They had small patrol ships meant for rescuing stranded travelers and exploring distant moons. These ships had no weapons, so brave pilots flew them directly into the Krell vessels, hoping their sacrifice might destroy a few enemy ships. It barely made a difference. For every Krell ship destroyed, 100 more took its place. The Krell were not just attacking. They were harvesting. Their ships landed in the cities and released machines that consumed everything. Buildings, vehicles, even the ground itself was stripped away and pulled into their massive carrier vessels. The Krell were eating the planet alive. On the second day, Zix ordered a full evacuation of the capital city. 12 million people lived in the Crystal Metropolis. The transportation systems were damaged and panic made everything harder. People pushed and fought to reach the evacuation ships. Families were separated. Children cried for parents they would never see again. Zix organized the evacuation with a heavy heart. He knew the numbers. He had 60 ships. Each ship could carry 5,000 people. That meant he could save 300,000 at most. The other 11 million would have to find their own way to safety or they would die. He made the choices that still haunted him. Priority went to children first, then parents with young ones, then the elderly who could not move on their own. Everyone else had to walk to the underground shelters on the city's edge. The shelters were designed to protect against natural disasters. They might hold against the Krell for a while, but not forever. The last evacuation ship lifted off just as Krell landing craft began descending on the capital. Zix watched from the headquarters, which still had power somehow. He saw the ships touch down in the central plaza where festivals were held every spring. He saw the harvesting machines emerge and begin tearing apart the Museum of Ancient History. 5,000 years of Velaran culture gone in minutes. By the third day, 8 billion Velarans were dead. Only scattered groups remained, hiding in underground bunkers and remote settlements. The Krell were systematically searching for them. It was only a matter of time. Zix had not slept in 70 hours. His skin, normally a gentle blue color, had turned gray with exhaustion and grief. Other coordinators worked around him, but they moved like ghosts. Everyone knew this was the end. They were just trying to delay it as long as possible. A junior coordinator named Lyra approached him with a tablet. Her hands shook as she handed it to him. The screen showed sensor readings from the northern continent. The Krell had broken through the mountain bunkers there. 2 million people had been hiding in those bunkers. Now they were gone. Zix set the tablet down carefully. If he threw it like he wanted to, it would shatter, and they could not afford to lose any equipment. He walked back to the balcony and looked up at the red sky. Somewhere beyond that smoke and fire were stars. Somewhere out there were civilizations that could have saved his people but chose not to. He hated them. He hated the Galactic Council with their rules and policies. He hated the Takari and Morphians with their calculations of profit and risk. Most of all, he hated feeling helpless while his species was erased from existence. Lyra joined him on the balcony. She was young, barely into her adult years. She should have been studying art or music, not watching her world burn. "The sensor array is still working," she said quietly. "Should I shut it down to save power?" Zix shook his head. "Keep it running. Keep broadcasting the distress signal. But no one is coming." "I know, but we keep trying until the end." Lyra nodded and returned to her station. Zix remained on the balcony as the sun set on Valara Prime. It might be the last sunset his species would ever see. The sky turned from red to purple to black. Stars appeared, cold and distant and uncaring. Then Lyra shouted something. Zix ran back inside. She was staring at her screen with wide eyes. The other coordinators gathered around her station. "What is it?" Zix asked. "A response," Lyra whispered. "Someone answered our distress call." Zix felt his heart skip. He pushed through to see the screen. The message was short and in a language the computer had to translate. The species was unknown. They called themselves humans. The message said, "Hold on. We're coming." Zix read it 3 times. Then he read it again. Around him, the other coordinators began to cry. Some laughed. Others just stood in shocked silence. Someone was coming. After 3 days of death and silence from the galaxy, someone was actually coming to help. Zix did not let himself hope too much. He had learned that hope could be as painful as despair. But he sent a response giving their location and the strength of the Krell forces. He explained that millions were already dead, and that the Krell would likely kill millions more before help could arrive. The human response came quickly. "We understand. Save as many as you can. We'll be there in 2 weeks." 2 weeks. Zix looked around at his exhausted team. He looked at the screens showing Krell ships landing in every remaining city. 2 weeks might as well be 2 years. But it was something. For the first time since the Krell arrived, the Velerans had something to fight for beyond simple survival. They had a reason to hold on. Admiral Kate Morrison sat in the command center deep beneath Geneva and stared at the holographic display floating above her desk. The message from Valara Prime had been playing on repeat for the past hour. She had listened to it 20 times and each time made her angrier. The Veleran distress call was desperate. Their coordinator, someone named Zix, described the Krell attack in detail. 8 billion dead. Cities destroyed. A species facing extinction. But what made Kate angry was not the Krell. Monsters existed in every age. What made her angry were the other civilizations that had refused to help. Kate had been in the military for 30 years. She joined when Earth was still fighting itself, back when humanity's greatest enemy was itself. She fought in the Pacific conflict and the resource wars. She saw good people die for bad reasons, but she also saw humanity finally come together, finally realized that fighting each other was stupid when there was an entire universe to explore. 3 months ago, humanity made first contact with the Galactic Council. It should have been the greatest moment in human history. Instead, it was a disappointment. The Council was a collection of old, tired civilizations that had stopped caring about anything except their own comfort. They had rules for everything and compassion for nothing. When Kate asked why they did not help species in trouble, they looked at her like she was insane. Help without profit? Risk ships for strangers? The idea was foreign to them. They had forgotten what it meant to be part of a community that actually mattered. Now a species was dying, and the galaxy was content to watch. Kate stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was rising over the rebuilt city. Earth had been through hell. Climate disasters, nuclear scares, pandemics, wars that killed millions. But humanity survived because people chose to help each other when it mattered most. Not always. Not even usually. But enough times, in enough places, that civilization endured. She made her decision. Kate opened her communication link and contacted the Earth Defense Fleet headquarters. Within minutes, she was talking to Captain Jake Sullivan. Jake was on the EDS Sentinel, a destroyer currently in orbit around Mars. He was a good officer, tough but fair. He had that rare combination of tactical brilliance and genuine compassion. Kate trusted him completely. "Captain Sullivan, we have a situation," Kate said. "I'm sending you a distress call from a planet called Valara Prime. Review it and call me back." Jake's face disappeared from the screen. Kate waited. She knew what his response would be, but he needed to see the evidence himself. Leaders who acted without giving their people the facts were tyrants, not commanders. 5 minutes later, Jake called back. His jaw was tight and his eyes were hard. Kate recognized that look. It was the same expression she had when she first heard the distress call. "When do we leave?" Jake asked. Kate smiled grimly. "I need you to understand something first. The Galactic Council has forbidden intervention. If we do this, we'll be acting against their direct orders. They'll call it a violation of galactic law. There will be political consequences." "I don't care about their laws," Jake said flatly. "A species is being wiped out. We can help. That's all that matters." "I agree, but I need to know your crew agrees too. This is volunteer only. No one gets ordered into this mission." "Give me 10 minutes," Kate waited. She spent the time reviewing fleet readiness reports. The Earth Defense Fleet was small compared to the ancient civilizations. Humanity only had 42 warships and maybe 100 support vessels. But human ships were different. They were designed by a species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Every weapon system, every tactical program, every piece of armor was built with hard-won knowledge. Jake called back in 8 minutes. "I talked to my senior staff. We're all in. I'll brief the rest of the crew, but I already know what they'll say." "When do we leave?" 12 hours. I'm assembling a relief fleet. 12 warships, 30 support vessels. You'll command the military operations. I'll handle coordination with Earth and any political fallout." "Understood. What do we know about the Krell?" Kate pulled up the intelligence files. They were thin. The Krell were mysterious even to the Galactic Council. They appeared every few years, consumed a planet, then disappeared back into deep space. No one knew where they came from or why they did what they did. Several species had tried to communicate with them. All had failed. "They operate like a swarm," Kate explained. "Individual ships are not very intelligent, but they work together perfectly. They overwhelm targets with numbers. Their weapons are basic but effective. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles. Nothing fancy." "How many ships are we talking about?" "Sensor data from Valara Prime shows at least 10,000 Krell vessels in their system." "More arriving every day?" Jake was quiet for a moment. Kate knew he was doing the math. 12 human warships against 10,000 Krell ships. The odds were insane. "We'll figure it out," Jake said finally. "We always do." Kate ended the call and began coordinating the rest of the mission. Ships needed supplies. Crews needed briefings. Families needed to be notified that their loved ones were heading into danger. Medical teams had to prepare for casualties. Engineers had to load every spare part and weapon they could fit into the cargo holds. The mission prep took all night. Kate did not sleep. She moved from one department to another, making sure everything was perfect. This was humanity's first real test in galactic society. If they succeeded, they would prove that Earth was different. If they failed, millions of humans and Valarans would die. By morning, the fleet was ready. Kate stood in the observation deck and watched the ships gather in formation above Earth. The Sentinel led the group, flanked by 11 other warships. Behind them, the support vessels carried medical supplies, food, construction equipment, and enough ammunition to fight a small war. Jake's voice came over the communication system. He was addressing the entire fleet, and Kate had patched it through to Earth so everyone could hear. "This is Captain Jake Sullivan. In about 10 minutes, we're going to jump to faster than light speed and head toward a planet none of us have ever heard of. We're going to help people we've never met fight an enemy we barely understand. A lot of you are probably wondering why we're doing this. The simple answer is because we can. Because we're human. Because somewhere in our history, we decided that civilization means something. It means the strong protect the weak. It means we don't abandon people just because helping them is hard or dangerous. Every species in this galaxy has forgotten that lesson. So we're going to remind them." Kate felt a chill run down her spine. Jake continued, "We're going to face terrible odds. Some of us might not come back. But I promise you this. When we arrive at Valara Prime, when those people see our ships drop out of faster-than-light travel, they're going to know they're not alone anymore. They're going to know that someone in this galaxy still believes in doing the right thing. And when we fight the Krell, we're going to show them and every other predator species out there that humanity is not prey. We're protectors. We're warriors. And we're coming for them. The fleet crews cheered. Kate could hear it echoing through the communication channels. Pride and determination and maybe a little fear. Good. Fear kept you sharp. Pride gave you courage. Determination made you win. The ships activated their faster-than-light drives. One by one, they disappeared in flashes of blue light, jumping toward Valara Prime. Kate watched until the last ship vanished. Then she returned to her office and began the hardest part of her job, waiting. She pulled up the star charts and calculated travel time. 2 weeks at maximum speed. 2 weeks for the Valarans to survive alone. Kate did not pray often, but she prayed now. She prayed that Commander Zix and his people could hold on just a little longer. She prayed that humanity would arrive in time. Because if they failed, if the Valarans died before the fleet arrived, humanity's first act in galactic society would be a failure, and more importantly, the entire species would be erased from existence. Kate looked at the photo on her desk. It showed Earth from space, that beautiful blue marble hanging in the darkness. Humanity had spent so long fighting over that one small world. Now they had a chance to prove they had learned something from all that pain and struggle. They had a chance to be better. The fleet was on its way. There was nothing more she could do except wait and hope. Kate Morrison, Admiral of the Earth Defense Fleet, sat alone in her office and watched the countdown clock tick toward 0. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Valaran system, and Jake Sullivan immediately understood why the galaxy had given up on these people. The destruction was total. Debris from shattered orbital stations floated everywhere. The once blue planet below now glowed red with fires, and surrounding everything were the Krell ships, so many that they looked like a dark cloud consuming the system. Jake stood on the bridge of the Sentinel and felt his stomach turn. He had seen war before. He fought in conflicts where cities burned and millions died, but this was different. This was not two sides fighting over resources or territory. This was extermination. The Krell were not trying to conquer Valara Prime. They were trying to erase it. Lieutenant Amy Walsh sat at the pilot station, her hands steady on the controls. She was the best pilot in the fleet. Maybe the best pilot Earth had ever produced. Jake had seen her fly through asteroid fields that would have killed anyone else, but even she looked nervous staring at the mass of enemy ships. "Sir, I'm counting over 15,000 Krell vessels," said Commander Ryan Hughes from the tactical station. His voice was calm, but Jake caught the tension underneath. They're organized in 3 layers: outer defense, planetary assault, and harvesting operations. If we're going to reach the planet, we'll have to break through all 3. "What about their weapons?" Jake asked. "Basic energy weapons and kinetic cannons. Nothing exotic, but they have numbers on their side." Jake nodded. Numbers were always a problem. But humans had learned to fight smart, not just hard. He opened the communication channel to the other 11 ships in the fleet. "This is Captain Sullivan. You all see what we're facing. The Krell think they can overwhelm us the same way they've overwhelmed everyone else. They're wrong. We're going to show them something they've never seen before. Coordinated human warfare. Stay tight, follow the tactical plan, and trust your training." Sullivan out. He turned to Ryan. "Send the Krell a message. All frequencies. Tell them this planet is under human protection and they need to leave." Ryan worked his console for a moment, then looked up. "Message sent, sir." No response. Jake had not expected one. The Krell did not negotiate. They consumed. That was fine. Humans did not negotiate with exterminators either. They destroyed them. All ships attack formation Beta. "Amy, take us in!" The Sentinel surged forward, followed by the other 11 warships. The human vessels were smaller than most galactic ships, built for speed and maneuverability rather than size. But they packed weapons that made up for their smaller mass. Railguns lined their hulls, capable of firing projectiles at incredible speeds. Missile tubes held nuclear warheads that could crack moons. Point defense lasers created kill zones around each ship. The Krell outer defense layer detected them and turned to engage. Hundreds of dark, twisted ships broke formation and headed toward the human fleet. They moved in perfect unison like a school of fish or a flock of birds. No individual thought, just collective action. Jake watched them come. Ryan marked the lead ships in each formation. Amy, when I give the word, execute evasive pattern Delta. The Krell opened fire first. Green energy beams lanced through space. Most missed, but a few struck the Sentinel's shields. The ship shook but held. Return fire, Jake ordered. The human ships unleashed everything. Railgun rounds tore through Krell vessels like they were made of tinfoil. Nuclear missiles detonated in the middle of their formations, destroying dozens of ships at once. Point defense lasers created walls of destruction that no Krell ship could penetrate. The difference was immediately clear. The Krell fought like animals, all instinct and numbers. Humans fought like humans, using tactics and strategy developed over thousands of years of warfare. Every shot had a purpose. Every maneuver was calculated. The human ships moved in perfect coordination, covering each other's weaknesses and exploiting every enemy mistake. Amy flew the Sentinel through the chaos like she was dancing. She rolled the ship to avoid incoming fire, accelerated to close with enemies, and decelerated to let missiles lock on targets. Jake had flown with many pilots in his career. None of them were half as good as Amy Walsh. Sergeant Chris Martinez worked frantically in engineering, monitoring every system on the ship. The Sentinel was taking hits despite Amy's skill. Shields were holding, but they would not last forever. Chris rerouted power from non-essential systems to keep the weapons and shields at maximum strength. Engineering to bridge, Chris called over the intercom. We're at 80% on forward shields. I can give you more power to weapons or shields, but not both. Keep shields strong, Jake replied. We can't shoot if we're dead. The battle raged for an hour. The human fleet carved through the Krell outer defense, destroying hundreds of enemy ships. But the Krell kept coming. For every ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. It was like fighting the ocean. You could push back individual waves, but the tide never stopped. Dr. Lisa Green watched the battle from the medical bay. Casualties were starting to come in. A power surge on the destroyer Falcon had injured 3 crew members. An explosion on the cruiser Phoenix killed 2 engineers. Lisa worked quickly, treating burns and trauma injuries. She had been a combat medic before joining the fleet. This was not her first battle, but it was her first time fighting for people she had never met on the other side of the galaxy from home. That made it different somehow. More important, Commander Zix watched from the surface of Valara Prime. His sensors tracked the human ships as they fought their way toward the planet. He could not believe what he was seeing. 12 ships against thousands, and the humans were winning. Not easily, not without losses, but winning. The Valarans had been hiding in underground bunkers for 2 weeks, slowly starving as the Krell stripped away the surface of their world. They had given up hope days ago. The humans said they were coming, but 2 weeks was a long time when you were waiting to die. Now they were here, actually here, fighting and dying for people they had never met. Zix sent a message to the human fleet. Captain Sullivan, this is Commander Zix. Your arrival has given my people hope we thought was lost. Tell us how we can help you. Jake's response came quickly. Commander Zix, good to hear your voice. We need locations of all remaining Valaran survivors. We're going to establish a defensive perimeter around the planet, but we need to know where to focus our protection. Zix sent the coordinates immediately. The data showed scattered groups across the planet, hiding in bunkers and caves and ruins. Maybe 200 million Valarans remained alive. The rest were gone. The human fleet broke through the outer defense and engaged the second layer of Krell ships. These were larger vessels, heavily armed and more dangerous. The battle intensified. The destroyer Ranger took heavy damage and had to fall back. The cruiser Titan lost its main weapons but stayed in the fight using secondary guns. Jake made a hard decision. He split the fleet. 6 ships, including the Sentinel, would hold orbit and protect the planet. The other 6 would engage the Krell harvesting operations on the surface, forcing them to either fight or flee. It was a risk. Dividing your forces in enemy territory was always dangerous, but Jake saw no other choice. If they stayed together, they could hold orbit, but the Krell would keep harvesting the surface. If they split up, they could protect the survivors, but risked being overwhelmed in detail. Commander Ryan Hughes coordinated the tactical separation. He assigned specific ships to specific tasks, creating overlapping fields of fire that maximized their defensive capability. It was brilliant work, the kind of tactical planning that only came from studying military history. Amy pushed the Sentinel into a lower orbit, positioning the ship directly above the largest concentration of Velaran survivors. The Krell noticed and sent ships to attack them. Amy dodged and weaved, keeping the ship in position while the guns blazed. On the surface, Krell harvesting machines began retreating toward their landing craft. The human attack ships were coming down, and the Krell did not want to lose their valuable equipment. But some Krell commanders decided to attack Velaran bunkers instead, trying to kill as many as possible before withdrawing. Jake saw it happening on his tactical display. All ships, the Krell are targeting civilian shelters. Break formation and intercept. I don't care about the risk. We don't let them kill anyone else. The human ships abandoned their defensive positions and dove toward the planet. It was chaos. It was dangerous. It was exactly what the Krell wanted, to lure the humans out of position. But Jake did not care about tactics anymore. He cared about the millions of people hiding underground, terrified and waiting for death. The Sentinel screamed through the atmosphere, heating shields glowing red. Amy brought the ship in low over a bunker complex where Krell landing craft had set down. The ship's railguns opened fire, destroying the Krell craft before they could deploy their harvesting machines. Similar scenes played out across the planet. Human ships appeared like angels of destruction, saving Velaran settlements at the last moment. The Krell, confused by this reckless aggression, began to pull back. They had never faced an enemy that would risk everything to save strangers. By the end of the third day, the Krell assault was broken. Their ships retreated to the outer system, regrouping and trying to understand what had happened. 3 weeks after the battle, Captain Jake Sullivan stood in the ruins of what used to be the Velaran capital city and tried to understand the scale of destruction. The crystal towers were shattered stumps. The gardens were burned fields. The museums were empty shells. Everywhere he looked, he saw the same thing: loss. But he also saw something else: hope. Velarans moved through the rubble, clearing debris and beginning to rebuild. Human engineers worked alongside them, setting up power generators and water purification systems. Medical tents dotted the landscape where Dr. Lisa Green and her team treated the injured and sick. Above, human ships maintained constant patrol, watching for any sign of Krell return. Commander Zix walked up to Jake, moving carefully around a pile of broken crystal that used to be someone's home. The Velaran's skin had regained some of its blue color, though gray patches of stress still showed. He carried a data tablet filled with reports and requests. "Captain Sullivan," Zix said, "I have the latest survivor count. 185 million Velarans remain alive. The rest are gone." Jake did the math in his head. 8 billion to less than 200 million. It was genocide on a scale that made Earth's worst atrocities look small. He felt sick thinking about it. "I'm sorry we didn't get here sooner," Jake said. Zix shook his head. "You came when no one else would. You risked everything for strangers. My people will never forget that." They walked together through the city. Velaran stopped to watch them pass. Some bowed. Others reached out to touch Jake's uniform, as if proving to themselves that humans were real. Children followed behind, curious about these warriors who fell from the sky to save them. Jake felt uncomfortable with the attention. He was just doing his job. But to these people, humans were miracle workers. They were the answer to prayers the galaxy had ignored. Admiral Kate Morrison had arrived 2 days ago with supply ships and more engineers. She set up a command post in the old defense headquarters, which was one of the few buildings still standing. Jake met with her every morning to coordinate relief efforts and plan for the future. This morning's meeting was tense. Kate had received reports from Earth about the galactic reaction to humanity's intervention. It was not good. "The Galactic Council is furious," Kate said, pulling up diplomatic messages on her screen. "They're calling our intervention illegal and dangerous. They say we violated their non-interference policy and set a dangerous precedent." Jake laughed bitterly. "A dangerous precedent of actually helping people? How terrible. They're threatening sanctions against Earth. They want us to withdraw from Valara Prime immediately and let the galactic community handle the situation." "Handle it how? By watching everyone die?" Kate nodded. "That's exactly what I told them. Their response was that the Krell situation is complicated and requires careful diplomatic consideration." 8 billion dead isn't complicated. It's simple. The Krell are monsters and someone needs to stop them. I agree, but we need to understand something, Jake. This isn't just about Valara Prime anymore. Word is spreading through the galaxy. Other species that live in fear of predators are hearing about what we did. They're asking questions. Why did the humans help when no one else would? What makes them different? Jake understood. Humanity's intervention was not just a military action. It was a political statement. It challenged the entire foundation of galactic civilization, which was built on self-interest and calculated risk. Humans had introduced something radical, the idea that helping others was worth personal cost. Sergeant Chris Martinez interrupted their meeting. He looked exhausted. He had been working non-stop to restore power to the city. His engineering teams were performing miracles, but there was only so much they could do with limited resources. "Admiral Captain, we have a problem," Chris said. "I've been analyzing the damage to Valara Prime's infrastructure. The Krell didn't just attack randomly. They specifically targeted power generation, water treatment, and food production facilities. This planet can't support its current population anymore. Even with our help, people are going to start starving in about 6 months." Kate cursed quietly. Jake felt his stomach drop. They had saved the Velarans from immediate death, but they had not solved the underlying problem. The planet was dying slowly instead of quickly. "What do we need to fix it?" Kate asked. Chris consulted his tablet. Industrial fabricators, fusion reactors, atmospheric processors, and about 5 years of work. "We can slow the decline, but we can't reverse it without massive resources. Resources we don't have." Jake looked at Kate. She looked back at him. They both knew what this meant. Saving Valara Prime was not a one-time mission. It was a long-term commitment. Earth would need to pour resources into this planet for years to truly save these people. The question was whether Earth would agree to do that. Meanwhile, Dr. Lisa Green was dealing with her own crisis. The medical tents were overwhelmed. Millions of Velarans had injuries or illnesses from weeks of hiding underground. Malnutrition was common, infections were spreading, and the Velarans' medical system was destroyed. Lisa worked 18-hour days. She trained Velaran volunteers to be medics. She organized triage systems. She performed surgeries in conditions that would horrify any hospital on Earth. And she never complained, because complaining would not save lives. One afternoon, a young Velaran mother brought her daughter to Lisa's tent. The child was thin and weak, her skin a pale blue that indicated serious illness. Lisa examined her quickly and realized the problem. Starvation was shutting down the girl's organs. Without proper nutrition, soon she would die. But they did not have enough food. Human supply ships brought what they could, but it was not enough for millions of people. Lisa faced impossible choices every day. Who gets medicine when there is not enough for everyone? Who gets food when supplies are limited? How do you decide who lives and who dies? She hated those choices. She became a doctor to save lives, not to play God. But the universe did not care about her preferences. Someone had to make the decisions, so she made them. That evening, Jake visited Lisa's tent. He found her sitting alone, staring at nothing. He recognized that look. Combat fatigue. The weight of too many impossible choices. "How are you holding up?" he asked. Lisa did not answer immediately. When she did, her voice was flat. "I saved 15 people today. I lost 8. The math says I'm winning, but it doesn't feel like winning." Jake sat down next to her. "I know. War always feels like losing, even when you win. This isn't war, though. War is soldiers fighting soldiers. This is just trying to keep people alive while the universe kills them. That's what war really is, Lisa. It's always been about keeping your people alive while someone else tries to kill them. The shooting and explosions are just details." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the sun was setting on Valara Prime. The sky turned from red to purple. It was almost beautiful if you ignored the smoke and ruins. Commander Zix found them there. He looked worried, which was concerning because Zix always tried to project confidence for his people. "Captain Sullivan, we've intercepted disturbing communications," Zix said. "The Krell are regrouping. But they're not alone. They've contacted other predatory species. The Harvesters and the Devourers are joining them." Jake felt his blood run cold.
"How many ships are we talking about?"
"Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. They're forming an alliance to destroy you. The Krell told them that humans are a threat to their way of life, that if humanity is allowed to protect other species, predators will go extinct." "They're right," Jake said quietly. "That is exactly what we're going to do." Kate Morrison joined them. She had been listening on the communication channel. Her face was grim but determined. "Jake, I'm recalling the fleet to Earth. We need to prepare for a major engagement. This is going to be bigger than anything humanity has faced before. We can't leave Valara Prime defenseless, Jake protested. We're not. I'm leaving 2 ships here with enough supplies to last 6 months. The rest of the fleet needs to regroup, rearm, and prepare for what's coming. Because this isn't just about Valara Prime anymore. The Predators are coming for Earth, Jake understood. By saving the Valarans, humanity had painted a target on itself. The predatory species saw humans as an existential threat. And they were not wrong. Humanity was about to change the galaxy forever. But first, they had to survive what was coming. That night, Jake stood on the balcony where Zix had stood weeks ago, watching his world burn. Now the fires were mostly out, replaced by the lights of human and Velaran camps. It was not much, but it was something. Life continuing despite everything. Amy Walsh joined him. She had been flying patrol missions for weeks without a break. She looked as tired as everyone else, but her eyes were still sharp. "Do you think we can win?" she asked. Jake thought about it. The odds were terrible. Humanity was outnumbered and outgunned. The predatory alliance would throw everything they had at Earth. Billions of lives hung in the balance. "I think we have to try," he said finally. "Because if we don't, if we give up and hide, then we're no different from the Galactic Council. We become the cowards who watch evil happen and do nothing." Amy nodded. "Then I guess we better get ready for the biggest fight humanity has ever faced." Above them, the stars looked down on Valara Prime. Somewhere out there, predators were gathering. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Valara Prime. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Commander Zix stood in the newly rebuilt Valaran capital and looked up at the sky. Human ships flew overhead on patrol, but they were not alone. Valaran defense craft flew beside them, crude compared to human technology but functional. The Valarans had learned something important. Pacifism only works when everyone agrees to be peaceful. When monsters exist, you need warriors to fight them. The coalition of free worlds had grown beyond anyone's expectations. 37 species had joined, all of them seeking protection from predatory civilizations. Each brought something valuable. The Valarans brought scientific knowledge. The Karathi brought manufacturing capability. The Seln brought medical expertise. Together they were becoming something powerful. But today was not about celebration. Today was about survival. The Krell Alliance was coming, and they were bringing 5,000 ships. Captain Jake Sullivan, now promoted to Commodore, stood on the bridge of the Sentinel and reviewed the tactical situation. His fleet had grown too. 40 human warships, 20 Valaran defense ships, and dozens of vessels from other coalition species. Against 5,000 enemy ships, it still looked pathetic. But numbers were not everything. Jake had learned that lesson well. The target was New Horizon, a human colony established 4 months ago on the edge of coalition space. It was small, barely 50,000 people, but it represented something important. It was humanity's first colony beyond the solar system. It was proof that humans were here to stay. The Krell wanted to destroy it to prove a point. That human protection was an illusion. That the coalition was weak. That the old order of predators and prey would continue. Jake intended to prove them wrong. Admiral Kate Morrison was coordinating from Earth. She appeared on Jake's communication screen, her face showing the strain of months of constant crisis management. Earth's government was under tremendous pressure. The Galactic Council had imposed economic sanctions. Trade routes were restricted. Diplomatic channels were frozen. But Earth's citizens supported the coalition. Public opinion was overwhelmingly in favor of helping other species, even at great cost. Jake, latest intelligence shows the enemy fleet is 3 days out, Kate said. They're moving in formation, confident we'll just run. They don't think we'll actually fight. Then they're in for a surprise, Jake replied. What's our support situation? Reinforcements are inbound. Another 10 human ships plus coalition vessels. But they won't arrive until after the battle starts. You'll be alone for at least the first few hours. Jake nodded. He had expected that. War was never clean. Plans never survived contact with the enemy. You adapted or you died. Lieutenant Amy Walsh had been promoted to squadron commander. She led a wing of 30 fighters, half human and half Valaran. The Valarans were still learning combat flying, but they were dedicated. They had seen what happened when you had no warriors to defend you. They would never be helpless again. Amy briefed her pilots in the hangar bay. They were young, most of them barely in their 20s. Some had never seen combat before. She looked at their faces and saw fear mixed with determination. "Here's the truth," Amy told them. "We're outnumbered. The enemy has better numbers and probably thinks we're easy targets. But they don't know us. They don't know that humans have been fighting wars since we lived in caves. They don't know that we never give up. They don't know that we'll die before we let them hurt innocent people. So today we're going to teach them. Stay with your wingmates. Trust your training. And remember, you're not just fighting for yourselves. You're fighting for every species that's tired of being prey." The pilots cheered. Amy wished she felt as confident as she sounded. But confidence was part of leadership. You projected strength even when you felt afraid. Dr. Lisa Green had transformed the colony's medical center into a combat hospital. She had supplies for treating mass casualties and a team of human and coalition medics ready to work. She hoped they would not be needed. But hope was not a strategy. Preparation was. She thought about the past 6 months. So many people saved, so many people lost. The weight of every decision still kept her awake at night. But she kept working because that was what doctors did. You kept fighting death even when death seemed inevitable. Sergeant Chris Martinez had been busy too. He developed upgrades for coalition ships, integrating human technology with alien designs. It was not perfect, but it worked. The coalition vessels could not match human ships in raw power, but they could contribute to the fight. Every ship mattered when you were outnumbered 5-1. Chris also developed something new, a weapon based on Valaran biological knowledge of the Krell. Commander Zix had helped him understand how the Krell communicated, using a mix of radio signals and biological impulses. Chris built a device that could disrupt those signals. If it worked, it would turn the Krell's greatest strength, their hive coordination, into a weakness. If it worked. That was always the question in war. The enemy fleet arrived right on schedule. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in formation, their ships blocking out the stars. 5,000 vessels, all dedicated to destroying New Horizon and crushing humanity's first colony. Commander Ryan Hughes watched them on his tactical display. He had spent months studying predatory species tactics. They relied on overwhelming force and fear. They expected enemies to run or surrender when faced with impossible odds. They had never fought humans before. "All ships, battle positions," Jake ordered calmly. "Remember the plan. Wait for my signal." The coalition fleet positioned itself between the enemy and New Horizon, 48 warships against 5,000. It looked suicidal. The Galactic Council, watching from their safe distance, assumed humanity was about to learn a harsh lesson about galactic realities. They were half right. Someone was about to learn a lesson. The Krell commander broadcast a message. The translation came through as a demand for immediate surrender. The human colony would be spared if Jake withdrew his fleet and abandoned the coalition. Jake's response was simple. "No." The enemy fleet advanced. Jake waited. His officers looked nervous, but they trusted him. Months of fighting together had built that trust. The Krell ships opened fire first. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles filled space. The coalition fleet's shields held barely. Jake still waited. "Now," he said quietly. Chris activated his device. Electromagnetic pulses flooded the battlefield, targeting the specific frequencies the Krell used for communication. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Krell fleet, which moved as one organism, suddenly became 5,000 individual ships with no coordination. Ships collided with each other. Formations broke apart. The perfect swarm became a confused mob. "All ships execute attack pattern Omega," Jake ordered. The coalition fleet struck. Human ships targeted the largest Krell vessels, the command ships that coordinated sectors of the fleet. Amy's fighters screamed through the chaos, destroying communication arrays and weapon systems. Valaran ships used their knowledge of Krell biology to target weak points in their armor. It was beautiful and terrible. The battle that should have been a slaughter became a hunt. The predators became prey, but the enemy adapted. The harvesters and devourers, less dependent on hive coordination, began organizing resistance. The battle was far from over. For 3 hours, space around New Horizon burned with weapons fire. Ships exploded. People died. The colonial defense shields held against bombardment, but barely. Then the reinforcements arrived. 10 more human ships and 20 coalition vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately joined the fight. The tide turned decisively. The enemy fleet began to break. Ships fled in all directions, abandoning their mission and their allies. The Krell, their coordination destroyed and their numbers decimated, retreated into deep space. The battle was over. Jake stood on the bridge, smoke still clearing from a hit they had taken. The Sentinel had survived, but just barely. Around him, his crew worked to contain fires and restore systems. They were exhausted but alive. "Damage report," he said. Ryan consulted his screens. 5 human ships destroyed. 3 more heavily damaged. Coalition losses are significant. We lost half the Valaran defense force. Jake felt the weight of those losses. Each ship represented hundreds of lives. Families that would never see their loved ones again. But he also knew what they had accomplished. They had won an impossible victory against terrible odds. New Horizon was safe. The Coalition was stronger. And the galaxy had witnessed something it had never seen before. Predators fleeing from their prey. Admiral Kate Morrison appeared on his screen. She was smiling, but Jake could see tears in her eyes. "Jake, you did it. The Galactic Council is in shock. Half the member species are demanding emergency sessions. The other half are trying to figure out how to join the Coalition without admitting they were wrong." "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now humanity becomes what we were always meant to be. Not conquerors. Not merchants, protectors. The galaxy has a new order and we're at the center of it." Commander Zix sent a message from Valara Prime. His people were celebrating. The species that had been dying 6 months ago was now part of something greater. They had purpose again. They had hope.